Welcome back to the Chief and On YouTube channel. I'm your host, the Chief, and we are back with another FM experiment. So this isn't a player experiment, as you know. This isn't a management experiment, as you know. This is a nation experiment. So we are running a test of what would happen if Gibraltar had a golden generation. Now, to start off with, they are in UEFA Nations League D, playing teams like San Marino, and are ranked 198th in the world. They have a population of 32k, speak English and Spanish fluently, and their stadium capacity is 2.2k. So they are a tiny nation, which happens to be a British overseas territory. But their manager is Golden Child. So what I've done is create someone who's amazing in terms of his reputation, his stats, his skills, but he's at the tail end of his career. So he's played 99 caps, scored 25 goals, playing in the hole, model professional, absolutely perfect, but is looking for a new club. In addition to that, I've made him one of the best managers of all time, retiring from international football in 2 years, so that gives him enough time to get his 100 caps on the board. But he is the manager of Gibraltar, and he's stuck being the manager of Gibraltar. I think I've given him a 20-year contract, so he can't leave. He's free to manage any clubs at the same time, but from an international perspective, he is stuck in there for true. And in terms of tactical style, made him press him because, that's what everyone seems to be doing nowadays, and just made it a simple 4-4-2 because the players that I created for his golden generation fit a 4-4-2. So without further ado, let's have a look at the players. So right now, as you can see, even though Golden Child is the best player, the highest valued player for Gibraltar is Liam Walker, who actually plays in Gibraltar. And stats wise, he's quite decent, but again, he's 32 years old, so he's just an experienced midfielder. He's a journeyman, played in Portsmouth in League 1, played in Notts County in League 2, but outside of that, played a little bit in Spain and played a little bit in the Gibraltar Premier League. So the golden generation are all 16 years old, and they find themselves currently in the under-21s. So I've made these guys have the potential to be absolute world beaters. And as you can see, looking at the goalkeeper, everything you'd want to be good is looking very good at 16 years old. So he is going to head straight to the top. He's playing for a team in Gibraltar, the Lions. In fact, all of them are playing for the Lions. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes to as well, in addition to the other players in the golden generation. So you've got the centre back left, centre back right, right back, left back, left central midfielder, right central midfielder, right winger, in case the manager decides to change his formation, left winger for the same purposes, left central forward, and finally the right central forward. So that's the team, just 11 players, no subs, no nothing like that. It's just a case of how good can they become playing together under the tutelage of an amazing manager, and will they win any international honours? That's it, that's the experiment. No injuries in the game, and we're just going to fast forward now and see how good they get. So we're back. The date is now 1st of August 2024, and this is just at the end of a Euro year. So obviously we had Euro 2021 to navigate. We had Euro 2024 and also World Cup 2022. So we're going to have a look now and see how well the boys have been doing. This is about 4 years, so they'll be about 20. So you'd expect most of them to either have moved on to a really big club and to be playing in Gibraltar. But we could be wrong. They could just be languishing in the Gibraltar Premier Division and not very good. Let's find out. So as you can see, Gibraltar are now ranked 135th in the world. And their nation has actually moved up a little bit in terms of reputation as well. So from 198th to 135, they've actually been promoted to UEFA Nations League C Group 4 now. So they moved up from Group D. So let's have a look at the schedule. So in the first year, they absolutely dominated Liechtenstein and San Marino and drew 2-2 with Cyprus. So again, the boys weren't playing yet. Golden Child got his 100th game. He ended up on 109 caps in the end, but he really led the team there in the Nations League D. The next year after that, World Cup qualifiers didn't have enough talent. They looked like they took some heavy beatings, but they managed to beat Kazakhstan. Then got some decent wins against Malta and Faroe Islands before again returning to Euro World Cup qualifiers and taking some Pamins before beating Kazakhstan. So they were definitely better than Kazakhstan and managed to get a draw at home against Cyprus, so equal what they did before in the previous year. So moving on, then they started getting another couple of draws against decent-ish opposition before Nations League Group C, struggled against Estonia and Latvia, then played Israel, struggled again, before they turned it around. So somehow, I don't know what happened, they turned it around. Won away at Latvia, beat Estonia at home, and then won convincingly away in Israel. Then played Armenia and Kosovo and won and drew those friendlies. So no Euros that year. Next year after that, Euro qualifiers. And they won their first game straight off the bat against Lithuania before losing to Ukraine. Only 1-0 to be honest, for their biggest scalp to date. Sweden. And this is where we've seen the golden generation finally come through and start playing games. So 2023. Then they drew with Netherlands 1-1. So that's a great result for Gibraltar, definitely. Beating Lithuania with ease again. Beating Ukraine at home. Unlucky against Netherlands on the Rock. Unlucky on the Rock. Losing to a late one from Memphis Depay. Before getting absolutely hammered by Sweden. So that was just an off day from the team altogether. Before this year, they've started well. They've won all their friendlies convincingly. And now they're looking to play Nations League Group C this summer. So the manager, still looking good. No issues here. Still got all his stats. Model professional. So in terms of the team, it seems all of them now, except for Golden Generation right central forward and Golden Generation goalkeeper, are in the first team squad. So for some reason, Golden Generation is here, but he's not in the Gibraltar squad. So that's quite an interesting one. Maybe it's just a case of giving other people a try. But he's played 14 caps in total. And he's at Leeds United. So looking at his team now, stats will have improved a great deal because you've got someone at Real San Sebastian, right back at Stoke, and he's wanted by Arsenal. You've got Nottingham Forest, Stoke, Newcastle, Burnley, Huddersfield, and Villarreal. So again, we're going to look mainly at Gibraltar. We can see that they're improving. We can see that they're at better clubs. They're all 20, all valued quite highly. But it'll be interesting to see if any other regions come through, because there are such good players within Gibraltar now that they can develop some new talent. But for now, we're going to fast forward again and see how we do at the next set of tournaments. So we're back. The date is now 1st of August 2028. Wayne Rooney has just taken over as Newcastle, leaving his role in Blackburn. but we are here to check on Gibraltar. So Gibraltar now find themselves 73rd in the world rankings. So that's a jump of 125 places in the space of 8 years. That is amazing. And if you got a keen eye, you started to see their top players are now at the very top. Real Madrid, Liverpool, Man City, PSG, and one guy at Bournemouth. They're now in UEFA Nations League B, so they've had another promotion there. Stadium's still the same size, so not sure if actually any success with the national team will make the stadium be increased or them to build a bigger stadium, but an interesting one to see as well. Looking at the manager, everything looking good here. Still the manager of Gibraltar, locked in, and stats looking great. So looking at the schedule, we left them and they just played their friendlies and they absolutely walked the Nations League C. They won every game. Before the next year, they went into World Cup qualifiers, beat Slovakia in a friendly, then drew with Northern Ireland, beat Serbia away, but then lost at home. Their first game against England, so one of their rivals, England and Spain, considered, I guess, their rivals, you would say. Their first match against England, they lost 2-0. Then drew with Israel, drew with Northern Ireland again, before losing to England again, and then beating Israel finally. So no World Cup in 2026. But they did get an 8-0 victory over Luxembourg and a good victory over Switzerland for playing the UEFA Nations League B, but having a tough time. So they finally reached levels where they are playing quite tough opposition. They drew with Ukraine, drew with Scotland. Then France got relegated from UEFA Nations League A, which is interesting. But they struggled against them, lost to Scotland, beat Ukraine, and then lost to France. Year after that, European qualifiers. So now we're seeing a lot of green. So we're wondering if they qualified for the Euros. So they beat Northern Ireland, lost heavily to Belgium, but then beat Sweden, Kazakhstan, Northern Ireland, Liechtenstein, drew with Belgium, beat Kazakhstan, Sweden, and Liechtenstein again. And they made it to the European Championships. So they started off the year beating New Zealand and Mexico before beating Ireland and Latvia, and then they made it to the Euros Group F. Lost their opener to Turkey, but beat Croatia and Cyprus, so made it out of their group to the second round, but lost to a Haaland-led Norway. So looking at the game, they were outclassed by Norway in the end in the second round. Haaland playing well, Odegaard playing well, and Sanderberg playing well. But now we are looking ahead and we can see that they're in UEFA Nations League B and buoyed by a European berth. Can they get another promotion to European Nations League A? So looking at the values, the boys now at 24 are at the very, very top of their game. 2 players at Paris Saint-Germain. Golden Generation at Villarreal. Arsenal, West Ham, Bournemouth, Leeds. Some really, really good players in there. Some really, really high values in there. So now we're going to move ahead and see how they do at the next tournament. So we're back. The date is 1st of August 2032 and we are now 12 years into the simulation. So looking first at Gibraltar, as you can see, they are now 16th in the world rankings. They have travelled from 198 to start off to now being 16th. So how did they get here? A lot of their players are now playing for Real Madrid, so they are at the very, very top of their game. Stadium still the same size. No growth there. The manager is still at Gibraltar, but he's also been given the opportunity to manage Milan. So he's plying his trade in Milan and also Gibraltar. Not sure how I feel about that because it's kind of a division of time, splitting his efforts, but we have to trust the system. And he's also changed his style to vertical tiki-taka and his preferred formation is 4-2-3-1 now. So where we left them, they had a great experience in the Nations League B, beating Sweden, Iceland and Russia home and away, but drawing away to Sweden in the second game. And that got them up to UEFA Nations League A, And the next year they had the World Cup qualifiers. So they beat Iceland, Switzerland and Lithuania. Lost to Sweden again. So they're playing Sweden and Ukraine a lot, it seems. But lost to Sweden. Beat Iceland, Lithuania, Switzerland again. And did that qualify them? It did. So they finally made it to a World Cup. So they played United States for the first time, beat them, drew with Italy, beat Ghana in a friendly, and managed to beat Argentina 4-1. So England actually hosted the World Cup, it seems. But they wiped the floor with Argentina, beat Canada, made it through to the second round and beat Sweden, so that one of their biggest rivals, it seems, at Anfield, before beating Brazil in the third round. So they are now actually dominating big teams. But they lost to Portugal 4-4. The game ended, but they lost on penalties. And the first one to miss a penalty, Lucas Griffiths, I don't know who he is, but he's not part of the golden generation. Jake Kitchen, Harvey Crane, but they lost on penalties, which is poor. Then they joined Nations League A, lost to England in the opener, beat Norway, so returned the favour for that European Championship defeat, beat Netherlands, drew to England, so they've still not beaten England yet, and they've still not played Spain yet, interestingly enough, but beat Netherlands, beat Norway, and that moves us into the Euro qualifiers. So again, the Euro qualifiers, 2 good victories against the smaller nations, but lost to Turkey, drew with the Romania, beat the nations you expect them to beat, then just drew to Turkey again. So Turkey seem to have their number. They're not able to get over the line over them. But they were able to qualify for the European Championships. And look at that. The boys have done it. So let's start off at the top. They beat France and Germany, so 2 quality teams. Drew to Bosnia, drew to Slovenia, but they got to the World Championships. Drew their first 2 games to start off with, but they were able to beat England in the final game to make it through to the second round. Austria were the team in the second round who they beat. Northern Ireland, they wiped the floor with them in the quarterfinals. Italy, they beat them 2-1 in the semi-finals before a European Championship final, and they won 5-3. So interestingly enough, they didn't start with golden generation left central forward. He started on the bench. Now I don't know the thinking behind that, but the guy who replaced him cannot hold a candle to him. So what was Golden Child playing at? But irrespective, they managed to win the game. So some poor performances actually in the game, but they won 5-3 in the end. So this is an absolute snobber knocker. On the England side, the players we know here: Alexander-Arnold, Ramsdale, Sancho, and Sessegnon, Greenwood, Declan Rice. How old is Declan? 33 years old, model citizen. And a couple of guys on the bench that we know as well. But that is incredible. They won a European Championship. They are now a huge nation. A lot of nations never done that, but Gibraltar have gotten over the line. So now they've got another Nations League to look forward to. So it's now down to, will they be able to get a World Cup, and will they be able to get a Nations League to complete the set and solidify this golden generation as one of the best evers? Because they are the best Gibraltarian team in history, that's without doubt. But can they really cement themselves as a golden generation for the ages, similar to what the France circa 2000 did, and to an extent France circa 2026 to 2020, making the World Cup final and the Euro finals as well. But we'll fast forward again to the next set of tournaments. So we're back. Date is 1st of July 2036, and we're going to check on Gibraltar. So their steady rise to the top has continued. Gibraltar are now ranked 8th in the world. So it's actually a reverse. So their highest position was 5th, and now they've started to fall off again slightly. Stadium still the same size. Players still playing at the top of their game. Let's have a look at the manager. He's still in charge of Milan, it seems, and everything's going well in terms of stats. Nothing's changed in terms of playing style and preferred formation. let's have a look at the team. So after their epic European Championship victory, they then drew with Belgium and Turkey, which again, Turkey they'd never beaten. Lost to Portugal 4-0, so that would have definitely hurt. Big loss. Then they finally got their first victory over Turkey and beat Belgium and returned the favour by beating Portugal. The next year they had European qualifiers, and again, being a bigger nation now, they didn't have to contend with harder teams in their group, so they wiped the floor with everyone in their group. That got them more World Cup berth, and they got very, very, very close. This one's gonna rankle. So starting at the top, Peru and Poland were dealt with well, Ivory Coast and Senegal too, before they started the Group D in the World Cup with a victory over China and Mali, got through to the second round, beat Ivory Coast, then played Uruguay in the third round, beat them, England in the quarterfinal, beat them 4-0, Belgium in the semi-final, beat them 4-0, before playing Spain, their biggest rivals, in the World Cup final, losing 6-0. So World Cup runners up. This was the year that the boys needed to win the World Cup, you feel. But unfortunately, they lost 6-0. That just hurts. But they moved on past that to the Nations League and started off well, beating Norway, Ireland and Belgium home and away. Making it through to the Nations League semi-finals the next year after beating Northern Ireland and Lithuania at the start of the year. They then lost to their biggest rivals again in Spain. Lost in extra time. Goal to Ajax Mariba in the semi-final. So Spain have halted the golden generation's progress in terms of them completing the set. And if you know anything about the history of Gibraltar and where it's located, you'll know that will definitely rankle the most to the Gibraltar people. They also lost the third round playoff to Netherlands. So moving on, they looked ahead and played the European qualifiers. Started off well, drew against Northern Ireland. That's the only poor game in here. But did everything they needed to do and qualified. Played Austria, beat them. Played Russia, beat them. Lost to France in the final group game, but snuck through. But then lost on penalties to Scotland. So, as you can see, there's a lot more names that we don't recognise on the penalty list. So it's interesting to see how old the boys are now. So the boys are now 32. So still at the peak / end of their career. And they're still at big nations, but this is sort of the end of this golden generation. There's not going to be much more left in their legs. They're going to need to convert this Nations League now, really, if they're going to get one of those over the line. And they're going to need to convert the World Cup at the age of 34 if they're going to get over the line. So not impossible, but it's going to be a big stretch. But for now, we're going to fast forward and go and see how they do in those tournaments. So we're back. The date is 1st of August 2040, and we are now 20 years into the simulation. How are Gibraltar doing? Were the golden generation able to get the other two tournaments over the line? So as you can see, they are now 7th in the world rankings, and for the first time, the golden generation are no longer captain and vice captain. So you've got Joe Weller, who's a decent player actually, very, very decent player. So he's a regen who's come through. Personality of Fickle is not very good at all, but he's good enough to be part of this squad for sure. Vice captain of Harvey Crane, same thing as well. Played over 100 games. Decent enough player, but unsporting. World ranking now, they've sort of settled into 7th position. They peaked at 5th, so that was the highest they got to. And still in UEFA Nations League A, but let's have a look and see how they did. So they had a good tournament in the UEFA Nations League A. They looked to have qualified for the semi-final. Yep, they qualified for the semi-final, beat England to make it through to the final, but then lost to Spain again. That's their 3rd loss on the bounce to Spain. Only played them 3 times. World Cup final. Nation League semi-final and a Nations League final. So Spain have been their ultimate ops. They then brushed off the cobwebs and started the World Cup campaign. Did very well, drew into Austria, but they made it to the World Cup proper. And they actually played Thailand. So Thailand made it to the World Cup. That's quite interesting. That's quite good, actually. But they beat them, beat Uruguay, beat Iran, but lost to France in the third round. So they've always been struggling against France as well. But they moved on to the Nations League. Had an okay year. Don't think they qualified out of that group. Nope, they didn't. But now they're looking good in the Euro qualifiers, so they should qualify for the Euros. But it's such a shame that the golden generation, it seems, won't get a World Cup or won't get a Nations League, all stopped by Spain. That's going to hurt. The one team they had on their rivals list is Spain, and Spain just stopped them from doing anything. So they made it to the Euros this year, started off the group well, got out of the group, but then lost to Netherlands in the second round. So that's pretty much going to be one of the final tournaments of this team. And as you can see, they had their day in the sun, but that's it. They're bowing out with one European Championship to their name and the highest world ranking of 5th. But we're going to push forward another 4 years and see what happens when the guys turn 30. I mean, I don't expect them to still be playing international football, but we'll see if a new crop of youngsters come through and can maintain what the golden generation built. So the date is 1st of August 2044, and we are now 24 years into the simulation. We have come to the end of what we're going to be looking at, and we're first going to look at Gibraltar as always. So as you can see, they are now fully on the decline. They are still in UEFA Nations League Group A, which is quite good, but they're now 11th in the world rankings. So they peaked and now they've started to drop off. And that's because all their top players now are no longer part of the golden generation. And the manager is no longer part of the golden child, rather. So he's ended his contract after the 20 years and moved on to greener pastures. And now it's just the regens controlling the show. So golden child actually decided to leave Gibraltar and stick to continental management. So he's Milan for 9 years and Sevilla since 2039. So we know about his international exploits, but at team level, he also won the Copa del Rey, Super Cup and the Europa League for Sevilla. So looking at the schedule for the boys over the last 4 years, after their defeat to Netherlands, I'm guessing most of the team started to retire, because even though they started off well, they then started losing to teams that they have no business losing to, really, unless they've got regens coming through. But Serbia, they should be beaten always. Armenia, Georgia, World Cup qualifiers, doing well. Qualified, it seems, for the World Cup. Yep. But lost to Germany, lost to France again in friendlies, beat Chile, but then beat Syria, drew to Morocco, and then lost to Netherlands in the second round. So not doing so great there. Before they came through and did enough to stay in Nations League Group A, because they got a couple of victories in, but a couple of bad losses there as well. Before coming into the Euro qualifiers, and it didn't go too bad. They just lost to Norway and drew to Austria. But actually, wow, they qualified with that record in the Nations League. They qualified for the Nations League semi-final, and they actually beat Spain. So this is a complete regen team, it seems. So they managed to beat Spain, which is incredible, to be honest. That's their first victory over Spain, and it's the crop after the golden generation. So they avenged the golden generation's losses, but then they went and lost to England in the final, which is annoying. So they make it past their biggest rivals finally, but then lose to England in the end. But looking good in the Euro qualifiers. So they qualified for the tournament, it seems, but it was all for naught, as they beat Estonia in the first game, but then lost to Netherlands and Ukraine, and then lost to their rivals again in the second round. So in the end, we were able to make a golden generation and get them to win a tournament, but I think a bit of bad luck prevented the Gibraltarian golden generation from completing the set and being the best team in the land and best team in the world. But a highest point of 5th in the world rankings is quite good, especially for starting from 198. But now that that's finished, let's have a look at the crazy world and see what else has been going on. So in the Ballon d'Or, somehow Ronaldo at 36 and 37 won back-to-back Ballon d'Ors again. Before Mbappe came through, and the first time ever in any of these simulations I've seen Marcus Rashford win a Ballon d'Or playing for Barcelona at 28. Love that for him. Then Regens came through before Mbappe, Iaxi Mariba, who ended the hopes of our golden nation. He came through with one. Then Mbappe, playing for Madrid now, won another one. Then Goni, this guy, this regen has been excellent. Another regen, Francisco, Mbappe in there as well. But after that, it's just been dominated by others. And John Baxter, who's Scottish, has won 4 in a row. So in the World Cup, as we know, Gibraltar got close in one, finishing second, but the winners have been Portugal, England and Spain. So they've actually just shared the past 6 World Cups between them. And in the European Football Championships, you of course know that Gibraltar got over the line and won. But outside of that, again, it's just England, Spain and Portugal. So they've just been dominating this game. And in the Nations League, this is where we've seen again Gibraltar finished second twice, but apart from the first year which Germany won and the Italy and France years, again it's just those same nations, Portugal, Spain and England, just sharing things between them. So they've absolutely washed this save. But that is it. So this is a little bit of a different experiment. I know it's a little bit more niche, but very, very enjoyable experiment and took a lot to put together, but it was good fun and hope you enjoyed it. We're going to be running a load more experiments and simulations, but if you have any ideas of things you'd like to see, drop a note down in the comments and I'll make sure I get to them and get round to them. But I've got loads more ideas myself, so we're just going to be running them for the whole year. But as always, you can like, share and comment on this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel Chief of None. Thank you for rocking with us. Thank you for keeping it Chief of None. We're going to be back on your TV channels, on your phones, on your YouTubes very soon. But for now, look after yourselves and peace.